Metabolic flexibility. Have you heard about it? Should you know about it? And is it truly important? I've been in the health and wellness space for well over 2 decades, worked with the top coaches, trainers, doctors, researchers in the entire world, from NASA, the Department of Defense, to you name it, Poliquin. I mean, it's been awesome. And what I realized is everybody's trying to say the same thing, but they don't know how to say it well. And I was like, well, what if we can take a complex thing like metabolic flexibility and teach it to everyday people so that they can have a simple way of living better without being overwhelmed every time they go to look at a new diet, Google something, is this good or bad? Go to a trainer, go to a coach. I literally was just with a friend of ours and they're talking about their trainer and their trainer said this and they don't like it. And I'm like, your trainer's wrong. I was on with a friend the other day and they're working with a naturopathic doctor and he's doing hormonal stuff and cortisol and heavy metal detoxes. And I'm like, fire that person. They don't know what they're doing. They may be smart, but they're out of their league, if that makes any sense. But what if we can simplify all that for everybody? And so metabolic flexibility is the key. When you're working with a woman that's going through hormonal issues through menopause, right? Or a man that's going through midlife crisis, gained 30 pounds and can't lose it as well as he used to be able to. Or you're working with a young girl that's going through her period and her mood and emotions are all out of control. Or a boy that's going through puberty and his acne is so out of control that he doesn't even want to go outside. There's one secret to all that, because everybody's telling you to go gluten-free, you got to go dairy-free, you got to go paleo, you got to go carnivore, you should be vegan, you should be this. What are they all trying to get you to do? They're all trying to get you to become metabolically flexible. And so what does that really mean? And is there a shortcut? And I mean that, is there a real shortcut to doing that? Because if that's the real secret, outside of your emotional religious beliefs of what food should be, because some people are vegan because it's more of an emotional religious component rather than a health component. From a physiological health, it may be a mental health for them. When you're looking at metabolic flexibility, is the secret. It's, can you transition fuel sources? Because right now, majority of our population that's watching this video can't transition. You eat carbohydrates at too high of a dose or in the wrong form, your body is crashing from that. It's slowing down. You got brain fog. But when you give it to a kid, why do they have all this energy? Why do kids get energy when they eat and adults don't? What's the problem there? Metabolic flexibility. Your ability, metabolic means that you're metabolizing food for energy, okay? Food is fuel. It is energy. If it's not converting effectively to energy, then you're inefficient at it. You're not doing great at it. Now, you could argue as we get older, it just becomes less efficient. But what if it didn't have to be? Or at least not that extreme? After the age of 25, you on estimate lose 1% of your muscle mass as you get older. Well, that's not a good thing. What if you can slow that down to 0.1% because you're more metabolically efficient? Being metabolically efficient means that you can transition between fuel sources, primarily glucose and ketones. Our ancestors have lived in a state of ketosis, and if we don't know what that is, I'll explain in a second. Majority of our human existence. Over the last 100 years, the consumption of processed food, carbohydrates, and just crap has exponentially went up, right? Microwave ovens, nothing bad about it. I have nothing wrong with the microwave oven. It just makes things so easy, and the food sources are so poor that it's impacting your metabolic efficiency, and therefore you're becoming inflexible. So you're not eating food and getting the energy from it. So ketosis is a state when your body runs out of, it doesn't run out of glucose, it's depleted of glucose from dietary intake through fasting or famine, right? You don't have food, or through the lack of glucose or through carbohydrates, meaning that if in the wintertime you don't have excess of fruits and vegetables that are high in carbohydrates, potentially, especially when we were hunters and gatherers. So when that happened, our body then converted into this state of ketosis and it metabolized your fat for fuel and keeps your brain alive, your heart alive, and actually, honestly, you perform at a higher level. But we could even go back even 150 years ago, and most of our ancestors just woke up in a state of ketosis. A lot of you today, if you're really, really healthy, when you wake up in the morning, you have a small amount of trace ketones in your system. That's a good thing. But a lot of you don't have any. So what we want to do is we want to make this flexibility better. We want you to be more flexible. So my story, in my late mid-20s-ish, I got diagnosed with Hashimoto's. I couldn't use my leg. I lost use of my leg. My brain had been beat in from all my sports and activities and military career. So I was forgetful. I was inflamed. I was gaining weight rapidly. I could barely walk. I was miserable, depressed. I didn't know how many more years I had. It was a bad time for me. I did a 5-day fast. For 5 days, I didn't eat food. I ended up extending it to 14 days total. After 5 days, I felt unbelievable. I didn't know what would happen. I'd studied ketones and ketosis. I was like, okay, it must be this thing. And I kind of understand what's happening. I'm metabolizing more fat. But I woke up. My knee felt better. My joints felt better. I felt better. And then I started eating food again. And it took me a year. I did this diet while I experimented on myself for a year. After a year, I figured out that I should be on more of a ketogenic diet. But the problem I had is that it's really hard. And I tried to keep that diet up for 15 years, but every once in a while I would let's call it cheat. I would have some flexible days. And what would happen is I would not feel good after doing that. And they told me that I wasn't metabolically flexible. Because you should be able to be on a ketogenic diet. There's some medical cases out there that you got to follow your doctors. If you're on a medical-based diet because you have an extreme medical case, follow your doctor. Do not take this advice. And I do work with a lot of those people and those doctors. But for the everyday person, if you're on a ketogenic or a low-carb diet and you eat some carbohydrates. Now, I'm not telling you to go eat a whole pizza because that's just excessive. Maybe you feel crappy because you just ate too much and too much of the wrong stuff, right? But if you go and have a sweet potato or you have rice or you have, and don't get on the sandbag. If you're on this place like, you should never have rice, it's a grain. Listen, there's cultures that have lived on rice for 10,000 years and they've lived to 120. So don't tell me that rice is the worst thing in the world, but it may be bad for you currently. But maybe you should be able to have a little bit of rice and not crash and feel horrible from it. Don't blame everything else, make yourself stronger. And that's what metabolic flexibility is all about. And there's a cheat code to the whole thing that we figured out that works. And it's a cheat code, and that's what's so cool about it. But here's the key thing, is that you should be able to transition and introduce natural whole foods that our ancestors had for all their existence. When they had too many pieces of watermelon, they didn't feel like crap. When they ate a piece of bread, they didn't feel like crap. If you have a true gluten intolerance, then that's something you should avoid. But what's happening is everybody's trying these diets and they come off and they feel bad and then they think there's something wrong with that food. No, something's wrong with you. You're not metabolically flexible. Let's fix that. Because guess what? After doing this for as long as I have, and then over the last 10 years with our secret weapon here, I get to go out and have pizza with my family and I don't feel like crap. I can go to Italy and I can enjoy some pizza and some carbohydrates and guess what? I feel amazing, feel optimal. I feel sometimes even better. I'm like, God, I should probably have this more often. I feel great, more buff, more fit, more strong. And yes, I still follow a relatively low carb keto lifestyle, but I'm able to have fun along this without crashing. That's because I'm metabolically flexible. And that's what everybody's trying to teach. If you're a vegan, what do they want you to do? They want you to be efficient at using the food for your fuel. But if you're not, it's the wrong diet. And if you're on that diet for 6 months and you don't feel unbelievable every single day, then there's something wrong with that diet, most likely. Carnivore, I see it often with them too. I see it on people on the keto diet. I see people on Mediterranean diet. I see people on the Nankin diet. I see people on the Atkins diet. I see people on, I'm just gonna eat a moderate diet and they never get to where they wanna go. It's because they're not metabolically flexible. And there's things that you wanna do to become metabolic flexible. And first thing, the number one way of doing that is you gotta drink ketones every day. Remember, the fuel source our ancestors had for so long, we need to get that back in your system. But because you're so inefficient, you don't metabolize fat very well. And there's a lot of reasons why this is. I don't want to get too deep into the science of this. But there's researchers, Dr. Mohika Parodi out of Stony Brook, she showed this, where you're on the perfect diet and you're not metabolizing fat effectively. So you're on low calorie and you're not burning enough fat, so your brain's literally starving. You're not producing enough ketones to substitute. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna give you the ketones. Sustain energy, mental clarity, and focus. What it does is it activates some really cool things, some hormones, some GLUT4 transporter. It activates these really cool things to make you more efficient. It takes up to 60 days, full disclaimer. You might feel it a little bit, but 60 days in is when you're really gonna hit the sweet spot. So I do recommend if you're gonna do this, you gotta do it for 60 days. And so what you wanna do is you wanna give yourself the environment that our ancestors were naturally living in. And then we're gonna use intermittent fasting strategies, not all the time. We have refeed days. This is super important. Our ancestors just didn't go a long time without food. They had days where they overfed. They had days where they ran out of food. So we wanna mimic that in a more of a systematic, normal way of our lives. And we can teach you all these things, and this is super, super cool. So being metabolic flexible is the secret, but the simplicity of what we're doing is what makes it not overwhelming to you. Because guess what? You don't normally have to change everything in your diet. We just have to fine tune some things. Maybe we have to go strict for a little while, but ultimately I want you to have the flexibility to enjoy your life, to live your life to the fullest, to get your results and maintain it. To me, I always say that that's the secret weapon isn't losing weight. It isn't getting fit. It's to get to your goal and learn how to live your new life and then enjoy it. That's what everybody really wants. But they always put these little goals. I want to lose 30 pounds. I want to gain 5 pounds of muscles. No, you don't. You want to get buff, beautiful, and be awesome and feel awesome and learn how to live that way. You want to lose 35 pounds, look good and sexy in a swimsuit and feel that way and know that you can maintain it for the rest of your life because you figured it out. And that's what we're going to teach. The other thing is exercise is a big component of becoming metabolically flexible because exercise helps you a few things. It helps burn excess of glucose off if you're over consuming. The second thing it does is it helps you store it. If you build muscle, you have more storage for glucose, so your body is not circulating in your bloodstream as much, causing havoc. And so it also has a huge impact on insulin and other components and other hormones that you want to do that it's going to ultimately help you out. Sleep is another factor, but I'm putting it a little bit lower. For some, it's higher, but for the majority, if we can get nutrition dialed in, we get supplementing with the right form of products to support it, and then we get exercise dialed in, typically sleep starts to fall in line. Hydration is super important in this. The quality of your water, quality of how you're drinking water is super important. And then the last thing is what are the fun things that we can moderate? Maybe it's you're smoking marijuana, maybe it's you're drinking a lot of alcohol. How much is that impacting you? Maybe we got to fine tune that process until you become metabolically flexible, and then you got to find what's reasonable for you. And so to me, this is the future. This is what everybody's trying to teach, but nobody's teaching it well. This is what everybody wants you to have, but nobody understands it enough to teach it to you. And then nobody has a system that covers all the places that you need to do to actually get the results. Now, if you are working with a doctor, there's some cool things. There's some new cutting edge medications that just make this work also. And you can do all these within that. And then the last little tip, and I don't think I mentioned enough, is how do you prioritize protein? Because as you get older, protein is king. Protein is constant. You can't avoid that. So if you're a vegan, it's a big problem. You got to get enough protein in, and vegan protein isn't the same as animal protein, so you need more of it. These are other things that we need to teach you to become metabolically flexible while you're maintaining the optimal results in health. So the future is here. Metabolic flexibility is the key to your long-term success. And what we're going to do, and what we already do, is teach you how to make it easy for anybody to follow that plan to get the best results they want. I'm out. Cheers.